All right. My topic today is why sci-fi did not get woke until Obama. And I know that spooks a lot of people because there's a lot of Obama haters. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to give Obama credit for almost anything. And while I don't revere him as Jesus, and I definitely feel that he could have done things better, he does represent a significant point in African American and world history, and it is relevant to this topic that I am going to talk about for the next few minutes. Barack Obama was the first black president, and after he won office, a lot of things became off the table, right? A lot of obstacles were removed off the table, and people started to dream bigger than they ever dreamed before. Now, he got elected in 2008. So I really didn't do a lot of research to come up with a list of books and film and comic book that were classifying themselves as black sci-fi. But I know the one group that I'm a member of, State of Black Science Fiction and the Black Science Fiction Society, two groups, right, kind of really solidified the popularity of this subgenre. So they were around 2010. So I think that people started thinking about this before 2010. So I'm going to say around the time of Barack Obama. So I'm not putting a year on it, but I'm talking about it in a era sense. So don't let it confuse you in terms of me saying that this is something that Obama created or this is an Obama policy. Get over that. Forget about that. But the Obama era is still an era in America. Black people did not think they could be president before Barack Obama got elected. They were thinking that all the way up until the night that he got elected. Not only that, even up until the inauguration, people didn't think. It didn't really settle in to a lot of people until after he won re-election. How about that? Okay, so why do I say black sci-fi did not get woke? Well, here we're going to have to clear up what I mean when I say woke. Now, I heard a video earlier this morning talking about sci-fi has always been woke, right? And it used a variety of definitions of what woke is. And I don't mind any of those definitions. One, I think woke is a slang term, so it means the opposite of sleep. And being awake can simply mean being aware of the things that are around you. So when we use this slang term, we're actually, as black people, saying you are woke to the things and the situations around you, meaning you don't know what they're really meaning. It goes almost back to the purpose of Malcolm X doing his soapbox speeches on 125th Street. He was trying to wake his people up. There is an element of society that comes even all the way as effective as in the education system, where there's a lot of things that we are taught that are not correct. They are lies, and they enable the American power structures narrative over manifest destiny and all the other things that America was bent on, and it goes all the way to before America with Christopher Columbus. So are you asleep to what Christopher Columbus did and what his mission was? Many of us are. So we had to be woken up to that. So that's one kind of a definition of what woke means. So now, how does woke manifest itself is how we can talk about it in terms of science fiction. How does woke manifest itself? Well, if you now are aware that these things were lies, you can do one of two things. You can either correct the lie and tell a story within a more accurate portrayal of historical events, and write a story about Christopher Columbus wanting to lead the people into slavery and saying that they make good slaves, right? And being very brutal in his attempt, or you can, and that's a more accurate portrayal of who Christopher Columbus and the Spanish and all that, and portray him as Jewish and a Christian convert and all of that, just to get enough money to go on his mission to find spice routes, medicine routes to China to circumvent the Arab traders that they had to trade with. All right, so that's a lot of history all in one. Fact check it, it's my opinion. I don't care. I'm just explaining to you what it means to manifest what a woke is. So that's one way. Tell a more accurate, truthful version of history, right? So that can be what woke is. So like Sword and Soul, that's a woke manifestation of science fiction, right? Or fantasy, whatever you want to call it, right? Another way to be woke is to, or there's a third way, because I'm going to divide this one up into two. A second way can be to become aware that there is an element that not only lied, but continues to lie to keep people victimized from the truth, whether it is called oppression, whatever it is, keep people asleep so they can be manipulated. Now, a good example of that is The Matrix, okay? The Matrix made a whole story, a whole movie trilogy, quote unquote, inspired by a black woman's book. It's not, written by her, but it's inspired by her, but you know what it is. Neo was in a state of mental manipulation and vegetated state. And when they took him out of that, he became aware of his surroundings, that Earth was in a post-apocalyptic state run by a computer that oppressed the people and put them in a fake world. So that was The Matrix. So if you want to understand how you can be woke in sci-fi, you can actually do a story about the sci-fi. You could do a story about the attempt to keep people asleep. That's another way. And then there's the third way, which I like. Actually, I like all of them because they're cool. There's a rebellion in telling, a true story about historical figures that we were lied about, not just the white ones, but even black people, you know what I'm saying? So there's fun in that. But the third one is actually to smash down the power structure of lie creations, the structure that maintains it, the structure that continues to perpetrate these lies. And there's few of those things, but probably my best example would be The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which was a story of first black secret CIA agent who comes back and trains people in Chicago street gangs, and they lead a gang takeover of America. Actually, the gang unifies the gangs in New York and in Chicago, and then spreads to New York, Philadelphia, California. And amidst a George Floyd type situation where a young man gets killed by the police, they start a rebellion that brings down the United States government. That is an amazingly woke story. Another good example of that is my favorite story, which is, and I like The Spook Who Sat by the Door, so that's one of my favorites. But my favorite is Zorro, A Tale of Alien Avengers, right? And in that story, the aliens are black, and they come to Earth and regulate things racially. So they take on, the system of apartheid, because this is in the 80s that this book was written. They take on the system of racial segregation in America. They take on the Aryan nation in Germany and Russia, and they regulate things. So that takes on the Eurocentric version of aliens that is perpetuated by people like H.G. Wells and War of the Worlds or Independence Day. So in this particular story, by design, it rips apart the power structure. So when we talk about is sci-fi woke, to me, just having diversity, just having a horror, right? Because we always credit Star Trek for diversity. They mentioned Dune, right? The movie Dune, where they had Arabic people living on a sand planet trading in spice. That's not revolutionary. However, it is not a lie. It's a parody of the world. That was the world. Europe needed to trade with China and other places for spice, and which is actually medicine, because there's nothing called spice. It's minerals, there's herbs, things that we can use to live. If we don't know what they are, then they just call them a rock. But until you find out it's got a medicinal use, or what its use really is, because everything has a use, then it's not a rock. It's cobalt, right? It's gold, it's silver, or whatever it is. It becomes more than just a rock or a stone or a Yellowstone, right? So like they call places Yellowstone, and that's probably a Native American one talking about the influence it, but a Yellowstone probably has a value and a purpose. So let me not digress. Let me just go back. So they'll call things like Dune, they'll say Gene Roddenberry was very, very progressive. And sure, they're better than lies. Yeah, no doubt. They're not lying, but it's still babars, right? It's still babars, because Uhura, right, is, as much as she is an African, right, she doesn't manifest any of their conflicts with the way the Star Trek ship Enterprise and the overall mission perceives the rest of the world. Now, if you read Indy Okafor, you read Jeff Carroll, you'll read some other African and African American, or African in the diaspora, because we'll include black people and African people who live in England. We'll include black and Latino people in the Caribbean and South America in that conversation. But if you look at those groups of people and how they write sci-fi, they don't perceive, aliens as adversaries as Europeans mostly do, and they don't have a European framework of what Earth history is, and they don't use European standards to stereotype human behavior. Let me give you an example. My biggest beef with Star Trek is how they weave in American history into the Star Trek narrative, how they weave European folklore into Earth history. That's beautiful that it's Western history, but when Asians, or when Indians, or when people from India, or when people from Africa encounter cultures that are not like Western cultures, that are like their own culture, they won't be surprised. So many times when Star Trek engages on another, and I'm just using Star Trek, right? But it can be used for Dune, right? But when they engage, or was Valorian, which is another old sci-fi story, when they engage in these cultures, they encounter cultures like Earth cultures, because these writers were European and they were mystified with the behavior of African culture, like Avatar, not Airbender, Avatar James Cameron story. Those people behave like people on Earth. So if you're a real master of Earth ship like the Enterprise, when you get out to space and you see people behaving like they behave in the rainforest, or Native Americans prior to Columbus, or they have religious spirituality like Africans, then you should say that. So to me, those stories were very European progressive, right? Or European limited. Okay, because when a black person, an African American, writes a sci-fi story, I'm aware of their Game of Thrones, their medieval Viking, right, experiences, but I also contrast that to, Yoruba, to Zulu beliefs, to Nile Valley beliefs, to Inca beliefs, to Aztec beliefs, to China. So for me, when you get out there and you got a spaceship Enterprise, it's going to be reflective of all of those different things. Uhura is more than a space secretary in my story. She's a master of the beliefs of her people. She's more African than me. Her name is Uhura, right? So anyway, I want to wrap this up because I'm a little over time, and I think you might get a little bit of what I'm saying, a little bit more. But like I said, science fiction is now becoming more woke in terms of being aware of its environments for black people than it's ever been before. So let me just put that to bed, because I don't look at Valorian, Dune's writer, and it escapes my name right now. His name escapes me right now. Or Gene Roddenberry or Isaac Asimov, right, as woke writers. Okay, many of them had negative opinions of black people and African people, or first world people, and even when they wrote them progressively, like Uhura, they didn't really write them. And even when you look at the population of Earth, okay, if you want to symbolize it like they do with Dune and say, oh, I did it in my book, Welcome to Boss Lady's Planet. I terraformed a planetary system and gave every continent a planet. But when you do that, guess what? You run into more people of color in your space universe, than you do white people. So anytime you come across a story where there's more white people in space, then you have to question, what happened to the black people? What happened to the brown people? They made up 9/10 of the Earth's population, but they make up 1/10 of the space universe population. That's an easy footnote right there. So anytime you see that type of imbalance where it's all white people and there's just a few people of color, you then have to question, is it woke or not? And that's the best way to go by. Just go by visual rich, and then you can get into the cultural diversity, because many times they do write these people of color behaving very much like Western European people. Anyway, that's it. Long video. I appreciate you. Like and subscribe. I had to get this off of my chest. All right, peace.